Hey everyone, it's Chay on the mic. We're going beyond politics. Hope you're psyched. Not just policies, not just plans. We're talking dreams, hobbies, and life's other strands. We'll meet the leaders behind the scenes, uncover the stories in between, the laughs, the quirks, the passions they hide, their personal moments, unfiltered and wide. Ready or not, let's get underway. This is Beyond Politics with Chay. Hi, welcome back. You're with Chay and the Oz Arab Media team. Today, I have Dr. Mehreen Faruqi join me on an episode of Beyond Politics with Chay. Dr. Mehreen is an avid and passionate advocate for justice. Born in Pakistan, Dr. Mehreen brings with her a passion for driving bold conversations and hard truths in Parliament. Training and trading as an engineer, Dr. Mehreen tackles policy problems in a very intelligent and proactive way. Dr. Mehreen, thank you so much for joining me today in the studio.
Shay, it is an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
You're definitely in campaign mode, coming back from pre-poll. I'm going to high-five you for making it on time. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to go straight into our icebreaker challenge.
Let's do it.
3 questions. First question, what is one thing that people don't know about you?
Oh, there are too many things, but I think one of the things is that when I was a child growing up, the only thing I wanted to do was be an actor. Not a politician, not an engineer, an actor.
Okay, so, that's a very interesting note. I think I had Evan Mulholland had a background in musical theatre and training. And often they say it takes a little bit of acting to get it right in Parliament. Okay, actress, nice. Okay, now let's look at a second question. What is one common compliment that you receive?
So I am actually stopped on the street every single day these days. Someone stopping me saying, Mehreen, I love the way you tell it like it is. I kind of love the way how you stand up for issues that are my issues. And it's usually young women of color who often tell me that I reflect their voices. And I must say that that is a privilege for me.
Amazing. I'm sure a great reflection of the work that you've been driving since starting your career in politics. A creative question. So you're obviously trained in engineering, used to solving complex problems. If you could introduce one feature to an iPhone or a smartphone, what would that be and why?
Okay, well, I think there's a couple of things I'd like to do, if you could indulge me. One would be like a bullshit detector. So you can move your iPhone around and you can tell who's bullshitting you, though sometimes it's quite easy to tell as well. And the other one would probably be the iPhone or my mobile phone telling me to stop doom scrolling. There comes a point at night
like
where a prompt to say, Mehreen, time to go to bed, stop doom scrolling. I think there will be 2 useful features.
Mehreen, tell me more about you, your childhood, where did you grow up, and the influences surrounding your decision to enter a life in politics.
So I grew up a world away, Shay. I grew up in Lahore in Pakistan. And I guess childhood, pretty much like any other child in that city. I had 3 other siblings, 2 brothers and a sister, and dozens of cousins. So I remember my childhood so fondly. Playing cricket on the streets with my friends and cousins, going to weddings.
So not dissimilar to Australia, playing cricket, family, friends.
Totally. That was what it was about. But I think one thing that I think about quite a bit now is that my dad actually came to Australia in the 1950s to study here. And obviously he came back, got married, had us kids. And I grew up in a house with a gum tree in the yard, a Blinky Bill book in our bookshelf.
Nice.
So he loved this place and he said it was really a beautiful country. So when I look back, I feel like I was destined to be here, but I never imagined in my wildest dreams that I would ever be a senator. in this country. And, people ask why, because I didn't see anyone like myself in politics. I mean, we still live in a pretty, I guess, white system in the sense. I know that our streets and suburbs are so multicultural, but our parliaments are not. But I joined the Greens because my values aligned so much with that movement, values around social justice, values around environmental protection, and especially values around standing up for minority communities or oppressed communities, whether they were in this country or anywhere else in the world. And I joined the party to be just part of the movement. I actually loved the job that I did. I was teaching at the University of New South Wales, and I loved it. But if there was one light bulb moment, it was door knocking. It was actually door knocking. Oh,
ooh, they say you earn your stripes door knocking.
Absolutely. So knocking on people's doors and chatting to them about what their dreams were about the world was just so powerful. And, because I'd had this whole other life in Pakistan and here and in regional New South Wales as well, I could just talk very easily to everyone. And I thought it would be incredible to take people's views, ideas, their voices into parliament. So that's how I got into politics here. But obviously in Pakistan, everyone talks politics. So growing up, politics would be at the dinner table. When you go out on the street, you buy a samosa from the person selling it on the street, you talk politics. And I was very much into gender politics, and the inequality between genders has always been something that has pushed me to fight for a just and fair world.
Very articulate, and thank you for giving us that insight into your childhood and those influences. You touched on a couple of things there which we could draw on in our policy discussion, but I can't wait. So there's a lot of controversy in terms of representing diverse interests in Parliament. What would you say to people that perhaps want these interests more integrated in the Australian way of life?
What I would say is that for me, the beauty in this country is that this country is a country where we have 60,000 years of First Nations history, like incredible history that doesn't exist in many other places in the world. And then people from everywhere around the world have come to this place to make it home. And the richness that brings in is not comparable to anywhere else. And so for me, there is no typical Australian way of life. What makes this place so rich and beautiful is that we come from everywhere, we bring our cultures, and it's like a melting pot.
It's beautiful.
And that's incredible. That is incredible, yeah.
Mehreen, what is one passion or talent that you harbour that would surprise people if they knew?
I don't know if it's a talent, but I love to dabble in painting. So watercolors and gouache. I love kind of painting flowers.
That's beautiful. Thank you. And thank you for sharing that insight into your life, your personality, and your childhood. Let's get straight into our policy discussion. Climate change. Huge advocate of supporting climate change initiatives in Australia. However, climate change isn't hitting everybody the same. What are you supporting in terms of initiatives and programs right now to ensure that people from low-income areas or frontline communities are receiving the same access to these climate policies?
So you're absolutely right. And for me, climate crisis has to be seen with a justice lens. So when I talk about climate change, I talk about climate justice. And we know that we can't get climate justice unless there is racial justice, there is First Nations justice, there is social and economic justice. Within Australia as well, we see that communities that are facing floods again and again, or in Western Sydney, temperatures are much higher than elsewhere in the city. Often are people who are marginalized in other ways as well. And if you look at it across the globe, then of course it is the global south. It is people who did little to create the climate crisis who are facing the worst impacts of it. We know Pacific Islands, water is lapping on their doorsteps. The country that I come from in Pakistan, hundreds of people die during heat waves because of the climate crisis. So we have to make sure that countries and nations that have contributed most to the climate crisis, and Australia is one of them. We are one of the largest exporters of coal and gas, which is the culprit in climate crisis. So we should be paying our fair share and also reparations and supporting people in our country, but also across the world to tackle the climate crisis, but also to make sure that they have enough resources to be able to adapt to the changes that are already here. I was actually in up north in New South Wales the other day, where people in Richmond have faced flood after flood. And these are climate-driven events. We do know that natural disasters are increasing in intensity and frequency because of the climate crisis. And they have been facing that again and again, and their houses have been damaged, their
and
property.
We're hearing about it more and more.
Absolutely.
And it's becoming something that we see every day and in pockets of Australia and around the world. We could talk now about climate action. How are you, in your role, or in your advocacy work, holding people and corporations accountable to their words in a way that's transparent to the public?
Yeah. So we are being ripped off by corporations, can I just say that? We know that 1 in 3 corporations pays 0 tax while they are making massive profits. We know that coal and gas corporations are making, billions of dollars in profit as they destroy climate, as they destroy, First Nations land and water and pollute the atmosphere. So I guess at the end of the day, we have to end new coal and gas. Without that, we will not be able to tackle the climate crisis. But in the interim, we should get polluters to pay. So one of our policies is about getting coal and gas corporations to pay for the damage that is being caused by climate change. So we have to, when houses are destroyed, when property is destroyed, that needs to be rebuilt. So people who are creating this crisis need to be, kind of accountable for that. But we also know why they're not held accountable, Shay, is because they donate a lot to the 2 major parties. And that's a big problem. So we've got to stop that revolving door of donations from these companies to the 2 major parties. And we've got to tax them to make them pay their fair share so we can actually fund the things that are needed for everyone who lives in this country.
Thank you for sharing your perspective, Mehreen. How do you plan to make climate change then more accessible for every Australian? So if I could just say, not just in the law, but in the language as well.
So we already know that a vast majority of people who live in Australia are very concerned about the climate crisis because now they can actually feel the impacts every single day. And so the understanding of what climate change means for people and for the future generations, and especially I see in young people, in the younger generation, there is a real passion for our governments to do something about it. I think where the problem lies is that there's a real disconnect between what people want and what governments are actually doing, because governments are not taking the strong action that is needed to build a better future for everyone here. And that's what the problem is. And that's why this election is so important, because we have to hold the Labour government, to account for not taking action after the last election was a climate election. And people had so much hope that our governments would be taking action.
So people, thank you for sharing your insight. They often hear that from their elected leaders and candidates about driving better or more informed climate policy. Then there are a lot of different ideas and policy initiatives that people hold dear to them. What is one policy or initiative that, in your perspective, would make a really positive impact for people in Australia in the next 5 years, especially for young Australians?
So when I've been speaking to young Australians, the one thing they tell me is to end the cause of the climate crisis. And that means no new coal and gas. Because that would mean that, we stop polluting the atmosphere, not just for us here, but for everywhere in the world. And so if we are in minority government, which is looking very likely that at this election, there will be a minority government, that is one thing that the Greens will push really hard for, to end new coal and gas.
Thank you, Mehreen, for sharing that insight and perspective on something that is obviously a huge policy problem for this generation and the next. I'm going to now segue into our rapid fire section. So 5 questions, very quick questions. First thing that comes to mind, you can't get around it. You ready?
Yes, I am a little bit nervous.
A little bit nervous.
I'm ready.
Okay, first question. What is your favorite film and why?
It is Terminator.
Really?
Oh my God, I love action movies. I see it once a year at least.
Nice. Okay, now favorite song.
I can't give you one song, but I listen to a lot of Pakistani music. So Nusrat Fateh Ali and Reshma would be some of my favorite singers.
I could definitely see that, hanging and bouncing around the parliament. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that vibe, obviously, to Oz Arab Media too. Okay, and now favorite meal.
My favorite meal is the simplest Pakistani meal, which is rice and lentils, dal chawal. Nothing can beat that. It's the staple, right? It's a staple. It's comfort food. My mum makes the best dal chawal ever.
Well, if you're ever around the studio, again, please feel free to drop some off. It would be lovely.
I sure will, because I love to cook too.
Very nice. Favorite cafe or restaurant? It doesn't need to be in Sydney. It could be anywhere around the world.
So there's one in Marrickville, which is Kushari Corner, and there's one in North Melbourne, which is Manze.
Manze. Very nice. Definitely one to check out. Now, the last book that you've read.
The Sunbird by Sarah Haddad. It is a book about justice for Palestine. And it is such an important thing at the moment with the genocide going on. And that is one thing that I have been so proud of, Chay, over the last many years, standing up for justice for Palestine.
Thank you. And I'm sure a lot of people in Australia and around the world would thank you for that as well. A personal mantra now, or some life advice that you'd like to share with our viewers.
Feel the fear and do it anyway. When something is worth doing, there will be a little bit of apprehension. That's when you know that you have to do it.
Beautiful. Thank you, Mehreen, for joining us today on another episode of Beyond Politics with Chay. I'm going to leave our viewers with Mehreen, who's going to share a very, very wonderful special message on how to best get in contact with her after the show. And for our viewers, don't forget to like and share this episode with your networks and stay connected. Mehreen, over to you.
Chay, firstly, thank you so much for having such a delightful conversation with me. And our door is always open, but the best way to get in touch with me is just DM me on my Instagram, Mehreen Faruqi.